Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Napick.
And I'm Bob Mueller. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it.
Today's podcast is Modern Romance, directed and written by Albert Brooks, 1981.
Funny stuff.
Well, let's talk a little about why we're doing this movie. We've seen this many times.
You and I have worked in production in different facets.
Right.
We've done our own films and whatnot. And what's interesting about this is it's kind of merges two stories together. There's a love story, a troubled love story, and there's this movie that Albert Brooks, as a film editor, is making. And you, being a film editor for many years, can definitely relate to it. And
right.
we have just, this just makes us laugh.
It's just one of the funniest movies about trying to maintain a relationship.
Right.
When you're single and you're trying to find the person of your dreams.
The perfect person of your dreams.
The perfect person. Yes. And the things your mind goes through to try and maintain that.
Absolutely.
And yes, it's from a guy's perspective, but it's just one of the best movies about this kind of thing.
I read a quote years ago, and it said that in this movie, Albert Brooks plays every man as asshole.
Well, that was kind of his shtick in a way. Even like in his career, a lot of it, he's always that kind of smarmy, smart-ass kind of guy.
Right. And he's had a long career.
Oh, yeah. I'll just say he co-wrote the movie with Monica McGowan Johnson. She worked with him on some TV stuff, Mary Tyler Moore, Laverne and Shirley. I think they worked in the original Saturday Night Live in like 75, 76.
Well, Albert Brooks used to do films, short films for them. Yeah.
Right. He did about 4 or 5 short films in the early seasons, too, though, like the first 2 original seasons. And if let's just talk briefly about his acting career. He was in Taxi Driver.
He's great.
But then he went on to Albert Brooks started to make movies. He wanted to be a filmmaker, and he did an early mockumentary, Real Life, which I think it must have been one of the first ones, but way before Spinal Tap.
And also way before the concept of this, reality TV.
Real Life is basically based on that PBS, An American Family, and it followed An American Family.
A Year in the Life.
So he did a mockumentary parodying that kind of thing.
My favorite line, Albert Brooks is accused of being basically in 2 places at once because some sort of trouble happened and he's being accused of being 2 places at once. And he says, "What am I, the Indian Rubber Man?" No, that's such an odd reference. The Indian. I remember the Indian Rubber Man growing up, but it just was such an odd reference for someone to make.
So Real Life was 1979, and then his next movie was Modern Romance,
right?
Which is 81, and then I'll just name the next couple of movies he did: Lost in America,
absolutely hilarious.
1985, Defending Your Life, 1991 with Meryl Streep. Yep. And then Mother with
Debbie Reynolds.
I like that movie.
Debbie Reynolds is hilarious in that movie. It's definitely worth watching.
Right.
There's a scene that has to do with ice cream that's turned into another form of matter. That is a very funny scene.
And as we said, he's also been an actor. He was in a bunch of James L. Brooks movies.
Broadcast News.
The
flop sweat scene. Yeah. Hilarious.
Terms of Endearment.
Right.
And he's been in a lot of movies. He played like some voices in The Simpsons and Finding Nemo. A lot of things he's done, actually. And one of the recent things he did I thought was really good. Did you see that movie Drive? He plays like this old Jewish gangster in it. And he's vicious in it. It's like a really strange role for him, but he's great. The female lead playing Mary Harvard, Kathryn Harrold.
Right.
Who didn't have much of a career, but she was in some interesting movies.
She did play a very pivotal role in a very, very funny series. She is Mrs. Larry Sanders.
That's right, the Larry Sanders Show.
She's Larry's first wife.
Francine Sanders.
Yeah.
But she was in 2 interesting movies, I thought. She was the leading role in Steve McQueen's last movie, The Hunter.
She was in that. I did not know that.
Yeah. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's leading lady in
Raw Deal.
Raw Deal.
Yes, there you go.
But yeah, she played in some other
I think
TV
she was in Yes,
shows.
Giorgio.
Yes, Giorgio.
I believe she was in that as well.
What is Yes, Giorgio?
It's the acting performance of Pavarotti. Yes, Giorgio.
Okay, look at that. And then some of the other people in this, as Jay, Albert's assistant in the movie, Bruno Kirby.
Kirby's great. He had so many different roles. I mean, he played, he's in The Godfather 2.
In The Godfather 2.
He's Clemenza, and he's priceless.
Young Clemenza, yeah. He's in City Slickers.
Right.
When Harry Met Sally.
He was in Cinderella Liberty.
Good Morning Vietnam.
The Harrod Experiment.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. And Donnie Brasco.
He's also in This Is Spinal Tap for a brief moment.
He's just a great comic. He's very understated. He doesn't really over-deliver his lines, but they're very dry.
They're solid. They're solid.
Yeah.
You know, the way he delivers them is just really solid. It's great.
And he's kind of young in this, like the young editor assistant in this. Right. And then, as we mentioned earlier, Bob Einstein as the pushy shoe store salesman.
We know him from a few different things. He was actually a writer for a long time, and he won Emmys for writing.
Well, just to mention the Smothers Brothers show.
That's how far back it goes.
Yeah,
sure.
and Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. I mean, that's some pretty good stuff.
For a long time, I'd say could be 10 years, could be 20 years. Super Dave Osborne.
Super Dave Osborne.
He milked that baby forever.
What the heck was Super Dave Osborne?
He just made it up, and he was on The Tonight Show all the time, and he was on a variety of other shows.
David Letterman. It's just this guy pretending to be like an evil type guy. Was it like the world's worst stuntman? I don't really...
He's always getting blown up. He's also Marty Funkhauser.
Of course. In Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
At classic role.
Classic deadpan again.
And he just passed away.
Yeah, that's too bad. He was a really funny guy. So we will get to the scene where he's only in one scene in the movie, but it's a priceless scene.
Yes,
and he's in it with his brother, and it's beautiful.
And you can't say enough about George Kennedy. He's been in 1,000 movies. I'll just name a few we love.
Yeah,
obviously, Cool Hand Luke,
the best.
He won an Oscar.
Absolutely.
For that.
Airport.
Patroni. Hang on. Airport 75.
Really?
And Airport 77.
There you go.
Earthquake.
Yes, of course.
And one of our favorite films, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
Absolutely.
He's so great in that movie. That is one of his best roles. Besides Modern Romance, I think that's one of my favorite George Kennedy roles.
He was in a TV movie once. He got bitten by a rabid skunk. I don't remember the name of the movie. He got bitten by a rabid skunk, and he chains himself to this stump of a tree. So
that's so George Kennedy.
So in case he goes mad, he's not going to hurt his family.
Right.
I'm not making that up.
And of course, James L. Brooks as the director in this movie. Yeah.
James L. Brooks goes way back, doing all kinds of stuff from My Mother the Car, That Girl, Andy Griffith's Show, Room 222, the Mary Tyler Moore Show he created.
He won Emmys for the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Rhoda, he did Phyllis. He also did the Lou Grant Show, which was a great dramatic show, Taxi. And he wrote and directed Terms of Endearment, Broadcast News, and...
As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson.
That's the one I was thinking.
Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt and Greg Kinnear.
So that sets you up right there for what you're in for in this movie.
A wonderful cast.
Yeah, great stuff.
And I'll just start this off this way. I read this. I hope it's true. You never know what you read on the internet. According to Albert Brooks, Stanley Kubrick was a big fan of this film. He tells the story that Kubrick called him after viewing the film and asked, "How did you make this movie? I've always wanted to make a movie about jealousy." And that sums this movie up. It's really one of the funniest movies about someone going crazy in a relationship. You know?
Absolutely.
His own worst enemy.
He is, without a doubt, his own worst enemy.
You know, the very first scene, it just sets it all up. You know, he's in this diner, he's waiting, he's nervous.
He's in the center of the shot. It's just a one wide shot. He's in the center of the diner, just sitting there by himself. And you can see he's got this kind of distressed expression on his face.
Like he's waiting, like, what's up? And in comes Mary, his girlfriend.
Right.
You know, and he's upset that she's late. Like right away, in this first scene, you kind of get the sense he's kind of possessive. He's narcissistic. He's got all these problems. He's very neurotic, obviously. And they start bickering about the relationship.
Yeah, well, when she first walks in, she is oblivious to his distress. He says he'd like to talk. Now, as soon as you hear that, we need to talk. you know, there's problems right there.
Right.
We learn he's a film editor because he's talking about the movie that he's working on, but he doesn't want to talk about this. The relationship is over.
He basically says, "You've heard of a no-win situation,"
And she says, "No."
no.
You've never heard of a no-win situation? He says, "It's like Vietnam. This."
I love how this is second to Vietnam.
Right. Well, they're on equal planes. That's what it is.
Nothing in between. So she's exasperated because right away you kind of get the sense he's done this before. She's like, "So what do you want to do this time?"
Right.
This time, she says.
This time. That's the key.
This just keeps coming up.
Basically, the relationship's over.
So the end of the scene basically ends, and he's like, "Are we free and clear?" And it cuts to the titles, the credits.
Right.
And music plays a very funny part in this movie. And the credit music
it's a music. It's
Muzak version.
Muzak version, or just an instrumental version of "You Are So Beautiful."
Right.
Right. The credits roll, and we see it comes up George Kennedy as himself. And right away, when I see that in the credits, I know that I'm in for something good.
We've had so many chuckles over that line alone for years.
I know when it says George Kennedy as himself, I know that I'm in for a treat. So he's kind of like Felix Unger. He has nowhere else to go.
Right.
So he goes to work.
Right.
And it's late at night.
Nighttime. He drives.
Late at night,
yeah.
and he drives up to AIP, American International Pictures.
He goes into the garage under the building.
That's where he's working on his film. And you know the kind of movies that AIP
right. Motorcycle gang films and B movies, basically.
Exactly right. We're not talking about, Academy Award winning, you know.
So yeah, he's an editor, and he gets to the room, and there's Bruno Kirby, Jay, his assistant.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's American International. They're doing some kind of space movie.
Yeah.
So this is like
cheesy sci-fi thing.
Right. Well, it's like the early 80s, so you can see American International is doing some kind of rip-off of Star Wars or something.
Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, the TV show, or whatever.
I mean, we don't really see much of the movie, but you can gather from what you see.
You see enough.
Yeah. And so Jay is this assistant, and Jay is like the
John, you've been an assistant editor before. Can you relate to this guy?
Well, this guy's the tireless assistant. He's young, so therefore he's got no life. He's there late at night. Yeah. He's always at this room.
Right.
And it's so funny. Like, Bob just comes in asking, "What have you done?" Like, Jay's doing all the work.
He's cutting the film.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, really.
And so he gives Jay his hard luck story about,
he broke up with Mary. He's a mess.
He's a mess.
I'm a mess. I can't work.
Yes, Jay. There's 10 million people in this city alone. How hard is it to find one perfect person?
So Jay says, "I haven't, but maybe you can," which is exactly what you want to hear at that moment in time.
But it's clearly like his expectations to find a mate are so impossibly high. And you get the sense how neurotic this guy is.
So Jay says, David, who's the director of the film, he said he called to recut the whole secret code scene, and it's too confusing. So Bob decides to throw himself into the editing, and no sooner does he sit down, and his faithful assistant Jay gives him the soundtrack and he gives him the picture. Bob gets up, hands it back, says, "I can't work. I'm not that kind of person."
What's cool about the scene is it is old school. It's film. So you see him hand him the film reel and the sound reel. It's
on the flatbed movie.
On a flatbed. It's a really cool old edit suite.
Yeah. As Bob's leaving, Jay says, you did the right thing. You told me all you ever did was fight. And Bob says, "That's right. We fought, and then we had great sex. We never could really talk." And Jay says, "Do you need to talk?"
So Jay ends up giving Bob 2 Quaaludes.
Well,
anyway.
he's going to give him one, and then before he leaves, Bob says, "Give me another one."
So he goes home, and you can see he doesn't really know what to do himself. He gets on the phone and starts dialing, and it's time. Back in the day, before smartphones and computers, to get the accurate time, you would call time. It was a phone number. So he's kind of not sure what to do with himself, and he ends up taking the lutes.
He takes both of them.
Takes both Quaaludes.
Right. And what's really great is, and this, I have to say that Albert Brooks is a really good actor.
Yeah.
And this is really serious physical comedy here.
I mean, it plays out.
It's slowly, bit by bit, it's as if he really took Quaaludes and is getting more and more loopy.
Yeah. And it's just him.
It's brilliant physical comedy.
He gets on the phone again, and right away he calls Jay. He just gets home, and he calls Jay.
To tell Jay he loves him.
He's like, you're the best assistant in the world. And Jay's deadpan, the lutes kicked in, right? But what's funny about the scene, though, is there's a guy, the movie starts out, he's breaking up his relationship.
Yeah.
But as soon as he's alone, he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Right.
That's his life. So here we are alone. He can't even figure out how to sit in his house.
So he starts walking around and he's starting to bump into things, bump into the wall and whatnot. And then he looks at his records and he goes, I love music. Music is the doctor of the soul. I love my albums. And he yanks an album out of a sleeve, takes the paper sleeve, throws it on the ground, handles this thing like he's handling a potato chip, slaps it on the turntable, and all of a sudden we hear Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band
there you go.
doing a fifth of Beethoven.
Yeah.
And he walks around. Oh,
yeah.
Good beat. And he starts talking to his little parakeet, Petey.
Right. Petey.
What do you think of this, Petey? Good beat? The way he walks around and just starts getting more and more loopy and just starts talking to himself.
Trying to motivate himself to do something. So he's like, now I'm going to call somebody. And he goes to his Rolodex, an old-fashioned Rolodex. Right. Again, you got to spin through all these cards with the numbers, and he's looking for women he knew, and he comes across Ellen. Somehow he remembers this girl. He sees her name, Ellen.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Ellen.
I'm gonna call her up, and he calls her up, and she's like, Bob? Like, she hasn't heard from this guy. When's the last time they talked?
Ellen, I have deep feelings for you.
Right off the bat, I have deep feelings. He hasn't spoken to this woman who knows how long.
I got these plans, and we're going to do this thing, and I'm going to pick you up tomorrow, and it's going to be fantastic, and I'll see you at 8.
He's like, Ellen, you're going to have the best time of your life.
Ever.
Where do you live? He's so out of it. So again, this whole scene, just in his room, just in his living room, playing out. And he gets another call. It's some guy. He's an assistant. He's looking for work. And here we see his jealousy start to kick in. The guy mentions Mary. He knows Mary.
So how's Mary?
How's Mary?
What do you mean? Well, she's really a great girl. A lot of girls who are really good looking, they're kind of assholes, but she's really great. I'm not seeing her anymore. Would you mind if I gave her a call or something? You're a scumbag. You should go live in a trash can, Mr. Trash Can.
Mr. Trash Can. Find your own dates, Mr. Trash Can. What are you, Attila the Hun? The lines in this movie just keep coming.
Oh, God.
He's like out of his mind. Because now in his mind, they're going on a date.
Right. As far as he's concerned, Harry and Mary are going on a date.
You know how when you're crazy jealous of someone and you think they're doing all these things behind your back? He thinks, oh my God, they're on a date.
And he goes out the door and says, please don't have sex with Harry. Please don't have sex with Harry.
He gets into his car. Next thing you know, he just
falls asleep.
He just crashes against the steering wheel. And he wakes up in the morning, looks in the mirror, smiling to himself. You did it. You made it through the night.
Through the first night. Major accomplishment.
It
totally
is.
zonked out on Quaaludes, but he made it through the first night. This is the first day of my new life.
Right.
I'm going to get showered up and health. I need vitamins.
Yeah.
I gotta exercise.
Yep.
So he goes to,
just like everything in someone of this type, he's almost like a kid. He's so impulsive. Like, what's the next thing I can do? So now I'm going to do this. So he goes, right to the vitamin store.
Right to the vitamin store, buys a shitload of vitamins, starts popping them in his mouth when he's walking out the door.
Thing is like, I just broke up with somebody and I'm trying to feel healthy.
And the guy gives him, you're going to need magnesium, you're going to need this, you're going to need that.
But it's so funny how he's just not self-aware. And then he cuts to one of the classic scenes of comedy, I have to say, to the sporting goods store. He drives to a sporting goods store. And he goes in, and there's he doesn't even have a name. It's I just call him the salesperson.
He's a salesman, yeah. And Bob is looking at this box. It's got sneakers and it's got sweatbands. It's like a running kit.
It's called Runner's Dream.
Runner's Dream.
And it's got sneakers and just like all in one kit.
So the salesman is Bob Einstein, which is Albert Brooks' brother. And if you look very close, you can kind of see them being brothers. But for the most part, one's taller than the other. Yeah. Bob Einstein, for me, he's like the early Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
He's so deadpan. He doesn't crack a smile, doesn't do anything.
He doesn't have to.
And the lines that come out of his mouth are just so perfect.
Yeah.
And his timing is amazing. So the salesman comes over, and the salesman says, let's get away from the box. It's cheap stuff. It's made out of old tires. You don't want to start your new life on old tires, do you?
He goes, I got the sneaker for you. Yeah. And he goes out in the back room. He comes back.
The most expensive.
Nike.
You're lucky. We had one one in your size. And he goes, well, should I try mine? That's the beauty of it. You don't need to. Doesn't fit, just bring it back. This salesman's going to sell him a bunch of stuff just to get him out of the store.
Well, you can see he's got this mark.
Yeah.
Right away he knows. He knows how to work this guy. And back then, in the early 80s, running was becoming a new fad.
Sure.
I mean, it became a thing.
Yeah.
So all this new gear is out.
So the salesman goes, he gets the most expensive shoes, and then he starts getting sweatsuits, and he goes, no, you need 2 sweatsuits. And once Bob starts to balk at the whole thing, but that's too expensive. I'm not going to do this. I don't even know how much I'm going to run. The salesman stops and says, with a disgusted look on his face, I misjudged you. I'm not perfect. Buy the box. You'll like it.
Buy the box. You'll
Buy
like
the
it.
box. I still use that today with different people. I say, you know what? You don't get it. Buy the box. You'll enjoy it.
And of course, once he says that, Bob can't back down. He's got to show he's serious.
Right. Now, that's it. So he ends up buying the 2 sweatsuits.
He starts pulling off wristbands off the shelves. He goes, you need salt tablets.
Salt tablets, yeah. 50, well, here, 200.
He gives the big bottle of salt tablets.
Huge amount of stuff, taking it out of the store. And he goes, and you're going to need a wrist wallet. What do I need a wrist wallet for? You're running. Where are you going to put your money? Well, this has pockets.
The tracksuit has pockets.
So he leaves there with, I don't know, $500 worth of stuff.
Easily.
Yeah.
It's
and he was balking at the $50 sneakers. That's great.
Classic scene. And then the next scene, he's in his car driving, and it's just him driving. And
every radio station he presses
puts the music on, and the first thing that comes on is Love Hurts
by Nazareth.
And he's listening. And of course, he's just out of his relationship, and he hears it finally.
Got to press the button, get it off.
Presses the button.
God only knows what I'd be without you, Beach Boys.
Hits the button again.
And then Along Comes Mary by the Association.
Every song reminding him of his relationship.
And this scene is only about what? 2 minutes?
It's
a minute and a half?
That's it. And that's all you need. There's no dialogue.
That's exactly what would happen if you broke up with your girlfriend.
Right.
You would hear those kind of songs without a question every time you press the radio. It's perfect.
It's pathetic. It's so funny and pathetic.
So he goes out on the date. He cannot remember what this woman looks like at all. He's standing in front of her building going, what does she look like? So he buzzes the buzzer. She comes down. They get in the car.
Well, he's like, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
He's like really talking it up before they get in the car. And you could see she's a nice looking lady.
He just remembers. Here's the cringeworthy thing about it is.
Cringeworthy is the word for this scene.
Because he sees her and goes, oh, great.
Right.
You used to work for Peter Bogdanovich. Yeah, I remember now. I got to tell you, I was really screwed up the other night. I just broke up. You just broke up?
You just broke up?
Yeah, it's all over now. It's in the past. Who would say a thing like this?
But what's sad about it is, he's like, that's in the past. That's in the past.
Yeah, 20 minutes ago.
But what's great about it is she is kind of gung-ho, though. She kind of lets it all slide by.
Yeah.
She's dressed up.
She's kind of weirded out by it.
And you can see she just wants to go out and have a nice time.
But she wasn't expecting him to have just broken up with his girlfriend. Anyway, so they get in the car, and then the DJ says, here's a very special request. Mr. Michael Jackson. She's Out of My Life. The heartbreaking song.
But what's
She's
great
looking
is the
straight forward.
camera, it's just one shot.
Yeah.
The camera's on the hood,
Right.
looking at them through the windshield.
And there's no conversation, no relating, nothing. She's just looking out the window.
But she's kind of smiling.
Yeah.
You know, we're
She's
going
trying
somewhere.
yeah.
And as you said, they're not saying anything.
She's out of my life.
The wheels just start to turn in his head.
Out of my
life. He's like a little chipper at the beginning of the drive, and then slowly you just see him change.
And then all of a sudden we see, wait, this apartment building looks pretty familiar.
Well, you see the look on her face. After 2 minutes, she looks out the window, and it's her apartment building.
Yeah.
He pulls up right in front again.
Right.
Like, what's going on?
I'm sorry, I'm dating too soon. I'll call you again, and we'll do something, and it'll be great. Okay.
We'll go away for a whole weekend, he says.
Who wants to go away with him for 20 minutes at this point?
The funny thing is, this funny and sad thing is, she's just so in shock. She doesn't even know what to say. And she just kind of walks back into her house. She's like, thanks for calling.
That's
like, I feel so sad for this woman.
Yeah. Great date. Great date.
He's just so terrible.
She's out of my life.
He drives right to some kind of drugstore, kind of like a Rite Aid type of store. So he picks out a bunch of stuffed toys, and he drives.
He's got a big giraffe.
A
little talkie doll that says, I love you.
And you see he pulls up in front of her house, and he just puts all the stuff at the doorstep. Right. I guess she's not home. And finally he goes home and looking at that machine for a message, and it's blinking. And he picks it up, and it's Mary. And she loves the gifts. Oh, this is so sweet.
I love the giraffe.
So they kind of make up. And she's a little, in a way, like you hear them talking, she's a little hesitant still, like, because she knows this is like a cycle. And next morning, he's in bed, sleeping, her bed. She comes in the room, she's dressed for work. She's got to go to work. She works at the bank. And I have to say, she is in a really nice dress.
It's a clingy dress, yeah. She looks
and
beautiful.
It's just sexy.
Yep.
And he sees that dress, he does not approve. You can't go to work in that. And he's trying to be jokey about it, but you could see he means it. He's afraid of her going to work in that dress.
Right. He gets about a bed finally, and he says to her as she's walking out the door, you know, there are people out there, all they do is rape.
All they do is rape. And then we cut to the editing room.
Bruno Kirby is so good in this. He's part assistant editor and he's part therapist to this neurotic Bob. And what I love about this whole movie is this movie's not just a love story. It's half the love story, but it's also half about them making this movie and trying to cut it. I mean, it's a ridiculous sci-fi movie, and they're trying to cut it in one way, shape, or form in the editing process.
Right. Well, it's one of the few. I can't think of another. I mean, I know other films I've seen in editing rooms, but one of the few scenes where they really dig into a scene, you kind of see the process of
how you actually edit down a scene.
Yeah, and he's been thinking over. He tells Jay, the assistant, I've been thinking about this scene, and they're just trying to cut this scene down. And then in comes the director, played by James L. Brooks.
Right. David the director, and played beautifully by James L. Brooks.
Yeah.
So he wants to redo these steps that George Kennedy's doing. It looks, he was running on carpet. Can we make this sound look more metallic or something?
Yeah.
He's running on carpet. He wants it more metallic. He goes, I want to hump, pound, pound, pound. Bob disagrees, but he says, okay, sure, we can do that. And
he's like, call Todd A.O., the mixing studio. He tells Jay to call it up.
Quite possibly my favorite scene is the redubbing of Kennedy's footsteps in the studio.
Right. So now we're in a sound mixing studio.
Yeah, in Hollywood. And you have these three grizzled old Union Tex.
Right. So back in the day, and I'll just explain, really, the mixing console was like 10 feet long.
Yeah.
Because there were like 24 tracks. So there's music tracks, there's dialogue, effects, etc. So they actually had 3 mixers. One was the head mixer. There was a music mixer and an effects mixer. So
But these
3 guys are just sitting there.
It's a total union thing.
Yeah, and it's like they could be car mechanics.
They have no passion for it whatsoever. It's just another
They're all
day at the
kind
job.
of been around the block.
Yeah.
They've been there forever, and here's this guy coming in wanting to redub some footsteps. They do this 1,000 times a day.
And they're expressionless.
Yeah. It's so the whole point is George Kennedy's running down this carpeted spaceship. I always found that funny that it's carpeted. It's a spaceship. And he's got to put in something more dynamic for footsteps.
So he asked the guy, there's a guy sitting in the center.
That's the head mixer.
So he goes, what effects do you have to put into Kennedy's footsteps? And one of the other guys says, well, why don't you try to put in the Hulk? The guy in the powder blue cardigan says, no, that's too slow. The guy suggests, what about Hulk running? Terrific.
That sounds good. Hulk running.
Hulk running. Can we pull that up?
It's going to take us a moment.
So they pull the clip of Hulk running, and we hear boom, boom. And Albert Brooks goes, whoa, 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 whoa.
And then Bob goes, what is that? The guy's screaming. And the head mixer goes, well, it just says Hulk running.
Well, put that down.
He said, well,
Hulk's screaming.
So then they decide they're going to do Foley work, which is in the studio. Foley work is like you had real props to make sound effects. Right. So the
name comes from the guy who used to actually do this, Foley.
Oh, there you go. And so they're like, what about concrete? So they make the guys are like, really? Like they don't want to pull out they got to pull out this big slab of concrete.
Right.
So that Jay and Bob could kind of run around on this thing and try to make footstep sounds.
He asks the guy, well, how much do you think that weighs? And the guy in the cardigan says, what weighs? He goes, the communicator, the thing, and that he's that Kennedy's holding, and he goes, maybe it doesn't weigh anything. Did you ever think of that? Maybe it's on one of those planets that doesn't have any gravity. Finally, we see some expressions of these guys snicker, and this one really old guy, codger, who's on the opposite side mixing board, goes, funny.
And they do the recording. They get the footsteps.
Chunk, chunk.
And they put them in.
And they actually work well, especially for carpeting.
And they play it back, and it sounds pretty good. Yeah. And and Bob's like to the head mixer, what do you think? And the guy's
I think you saved the picture.
So funny. But as they're wrapping up and they're leaving over the intercom, the guy goes, it's a wrap. And we hear on the intercom, okay, we have Heaven's Gate, the short version.
Next. So there's a scene where Albert Brooks is under the impression he's having dinner with his girlfriend. There was a mix-up. They were talking in the studio and stuff.
We cut to the Imperial Gardens.
So it's a Japanese restaurant, and Bob comes in and he just walks up to the table with
like about 4 Japanese guys. And back in the 80s, the Japanese were investing a lot in Hollywood, and it was big business.
Yeah.
So this is clearly an important account.
Right.
And Bob just like walks right in, right up to the table.
And says to Mary, what are you doing here?
Like, what? He's pissed. She didn't remember the dinner, or she had to go to work and not go to dinner with him.
Right.
Like, what?
You have this kind of altercation. It's really embarrassing. So finally, he says he's her brother.
He goes to one of the Japanese guys. He just looks at him. I'm a relative. I'm going to the airport.
So they go outside and they sit down at a table. And I love Mary's dialogue here. She says, "What did you expect to find when you came here? You think I'd be fucking these men? Did you just think I'd take my boss and give him head on the table?"
The sad thing is, he did.
Yes, that's
like
the
in
point.
His head. In his head, he probably ran every scenario, and she knows it.
Right.
It's like very selfishly how he interrogates her. Like she's the only woman at the table.
Right.
It's what he's worried about.
Why are you the only woman? Why
Yeah.
do you always have to be the
Like,
woman?
what? And then he wants her to leave. We got to leave here. I planned this whole weekend for us. And she kind of presses him on it, and he admits it's a lie. He just made it up. Well, not really, but we can go on a good weekend.
Let's make a stand. Let's go right now.
A big stand he's making.
Yeah.
Let's make a stand. Walk away
Yeah.
from your boss and your
Right.
clients.
Sure.
For some god-awful reason, she kind of gets coerced into it, right?
Yeah.
She kind of buys the shtick.
He's able to talk her into it
Yeah.
because he acts like such a puppy dog when he's bad.
Right.
So they're going to go on this weekend to a place called Idlewild.
And it's a beautiful drive up the mountains.
Yes,
It's
but they're not
nice.
talking.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there.
Well, they get up there, and it's the Knotty Pine Cabins.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is nice. It's romantic. They get in the room. They look around. Everything's all set up. It's a beautiful little log cabin-y thing in the woods.
And then she says, is there a phone in here?
Right.
No. Well, there's a phone booth outside. All right, I just got to call my friend.
Susan.
Susan, because she might stay in my apartment. Just goes make a phone call, and she's having fun on the phone.
He's spying on her.
And he doesn't like the fact that she's laughing.
It's like an animated conversation.
Who's she talking to?
Yeah, it could be anybody.
But
Her best friend.
she does close the door.
Yeah.
As she starts to laugh, which makes him even more paranoid.
It's a very right. As she's laughing, she closed
Right.
the phone booth door. Yeah,
Right.
it's a slick move. And the look on his face, it's obviously he's getting all jealous again.
Right.
And she returns. It's like, you seem happy. Who are you talking to?
You seem happy. What's interesting to me is there's this Jekyll and Hyde aspect to Brooks's character.
Yeah.
He's not always the neurotic lunatic, insecure maniac that he is with his girlfriend. Because when he's working on the film,
Yeah.
he's on it.
Right.
He's coherent. He knows how to even schmooze with people when necessary, like, assuage the director, just pat him on the head, everything's going to be fine. But when it comes to anything to do with his relationship with Mary, he's insane.
I don't get it. She's too beautiful for him. I don't know. It's like a real big insecurity.
He can't help himself.
No.
He has to say whatever is in his head.
So he grills her, and she finally admits it's some guy she was seeing
Right. When they were broken up.
the last time in August.
Yeah.
And he can't let it go. And finally she just says to him,
Let's go home.
Well, she says, let's go. I don't think we can't do this anymore. She's kind of had it.
Right.
And he sees that.
Right.
And what's his response? He says,
Let's get married.
That's his response.
That's going to solve everything.
Well, it's so funny that because you can actually see her mind like, okay, this is it.
Right.
And once he sees that, his only recourse
This is
in
trump
his
card.
mind
This is
is
trump card.
Trump card.
I'm sorry, I hate to say the
Let's
word
get-
Trump, but trump card.
Let's get married.
Let's get married.
He goes into this long, heartfelt plea about having a life together. And
Children. We will have great children.
we'll have great children.
When you have trouble in your relationship, get married. That should fix it.
and have kids.
Sure.
That'll really
that'll
fix
fix
it.
it doubly good. Yeah.
But funny enough, she kind of breaks down. Again,
Yeah.
you just see her fall. Maybe she's another part of this equation. She just keeps falling back in
Right.
love.
But the funny thing is, he says earlier on they can't talk. That
Right.
what they do is they get into a fight, they break up, and then they have great sex. So the first thing, they don't sit and talk about their plans. Whatever. He picks her up and he takes her into the bedroom. So it's just the cycle continues again.
There's no dialogue of like, how
Right.
are we going to work out this
Right.
marriage or whatever. And then the credits roll and it's Joe Cocker, right?
You Are So Beautiful.
The actual song, which
Right.
is interesting, right? The beginning is
And they have
instrumental.
type going on as the credits are rolling.
The credits are rolling, and so we see these cards come up. Robert and Mary were married 3 weeks later in Las Vegas, Nevada.
They were divorced the following month.
They are currently dating with plans to remarry.
Exactly.
So this, as you said,
Yes.
the cycle does
The cycle
continue.
continues. It
Even
continues,
in divorce.
continues. Yeah.
Hilarious.
It's certainly his best movie, without question.
Yeah.
I love Lost in America too.
Lost in
but
America's
this thing
classic.
I've seen it so many times and it works so well.
It's an odd film, though, isn't it? It's a romantic comedy, but it's really about a very
Neurotic.
He's got to be the most neurotic
Paranoid
character
lunatic.
in film.
He outdoes Woody Allen. 100-fold.
And maybe you can see Woody Allen's an influence, possibly.
Absolutely.
it's so interesting perspective of the movie, and it's a tight little movie.
It's very tight.
It's not very long, but
I love the fact that they have. I love the fact that they have those two different things between. Is you have the editing. I mean, I would actually even love to watch the whole movie about making that movie.
I wish they had like twice as many scenes about making the movie.
I'd love.
You could have done it.
Absolutely.
It could have, because that could have been a part of
so
half of
much
the movie.
good stuff in there. It's so funny, and it gives you the real absurdity about making movies.
Yeah.
And how stupid some of the things are to make this thing look like something.
And some of the hoops you got to jump through to please people and all that.
Yeah.
It's so perfect.
And that's beautiful. But it's not like any other comedy that I've ever seen. It's a gem.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Arnowitz for his music.
And of course, our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.
If you like our show, please recommend us to your friends. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and leave a review.
Go to our website at filmdetour.libsyn.com to leave comments or email us with questions. That's filmdetour.libsyn.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And you can also find us on YouTube.